Hello and welcome to another Blueprint Blether. I'm still James Wade.
Scott Riddell, Game Development Manager, Caledonia Midlands.
John Fletcher, Head of Pathway, Elite Coach Development.
Excellent. Chance to talk about all things Blueprint. I think we're going to talk about Wii Games today. Me and Scott were thinking of a topic and I texted him what we're going to do today and he sent sevens. So I had to we need to tie that in. So Wii Games is it. Big part of the Blueprint. We always talk about coaching through games, and we actually put Wii Games and big games. We're going to focus on Wii Games today, maybe look at big games and another Blether. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, we've been kicked out of the national team changing room, unfortunately.
Back in our home
I'm not
grounds.
surprised.
Back in our home grounds. Yeah, so since we last caught up, what's been going on in the world of rugby with you guys? There's lots of Blueprint stuff, player development stuff going on. Scotty, where you been about?
Yeah, I've been out and about, quite a few PDH sessions, player development hubs, boys under 15, girls under 16, girls under 18. And I suppose just to transfer into what we're chatting about today, a lot of Wii games, a lot of big games, a few wet training sessions, but the coaches have done really, really well to get a good buzz, a good energy with the players and make it, beneficial. It's
been challenging, I think, last week, wasn't it? Some of the weather, but fair play to the coaches for bringing it to life and things like that. Fletch, what's been going on in your world?
Lots of pathway activity. So after
cool.
Christmas, people get excited in terms of lots of festivals, fixtures, games, tournaments, male and female. So it's really exciting for those players involved in the pathway and the management teams, coaches, physios, docs, everybody else. So excited, and some really good events coming up as well. Under 18 girls down Wellington as an example, boys over in Ireland, under 20s preparing for the trophy. So exciting times.
And I suppose it's stitched on nicely what we'll talk about today. So Blueprint's all about looking at the training environment and how we kind of allow players to kind of express themselves and beat the game and find out at the game. So Wii games and big games. We used to talk about just games, didn't we? Games-based training, but actually we've been a bit more kind of focused on actually different types of games you can use. We've obviously got clan battles in there to talk about, but PDH, you mentioned it there, so just go through quickly Wii games and big games. There's a slide there which isn't coming up, but it is now. And you said there we are, straight from the Blueprint resource, but you've talked about PDH. How have you seen it being used? Why have we put such a big emphasis on this time around?
Yeah, I think we've had a previous Blether about session design, and obviously I think if we can differentiate a wee bit more between Wii games and big games and be a bit more intentional with that, I think Wii games would lend themselves hopefully to lots of touches, lots of scanning, lots of awareness, building connections, energising a group. I'm rattling things off here that we can speak in more detail about, but I think it's trying to give coaches a wee bit more of a framework to design their sessions from. That would be my take on it. Fletcher's probably going to be a wee bit different.
No, I'm not. I'm just going to ask. So if you could narrow that down, if I'm a coach and you go and you're helping me out around my development, and you're going this is why we would use Wii games, what would be the 2 or 3 main reasons to use a Wii game?
Yeah, so I think to make it look and feel like a match or the game. I think we're going to say game quite a lot in this Blether, but that's good. And then having transfer, so as much transfer that we can spend time on task through activities that highlight aspects that will hopefully develop into our matches. I think matches can also be, broken down into certain areas, i.e., whether it's maybe a core skill focus of moving the ball, of kicking, of realigning, but then also from a principle of play aspect as well. If there's aspects that we can maybe look to go forward quicker, then we can maybe have a game for that. I've got an app for that, a game for that. So a wee game for that. It's rolls off the tongue quite nicely.
I think you obviously come from a world of Wii games. We've talked about what we're going to do this week. Scotty just obviously put sevens as a topic like he does every week. So what do you find sevens is talked about as a great vehicle for developing skill development, because few players on the pitch have to be specialists in everything, really, don't you? Everyone has to be turnover, passing, kicking, evasive running. Fitness is a massive thing, I think, with Wii Games. I tend to use it a lot for getting loads of kind of like energy into a session and working on player fitness and things like that. But do you find with Wii Games, actually, we can make it be quite creative and make it not look like the game? So I think about some of the Wii Games that we use. They're actually quite exaggerated problems. Say you might like a bit more 360 or players all over the place. And is that something you've seen in being used?
Yeah, I think the other thing I probably left out with Fletcher's question was that we can develop things implicitly and make things, automatic. If we can get players not necessarily thinking too much about or doing things automatically, whether it's through a competition or we nudge the rules of the game or the scoring systems to develop skills. So if we're wanting to look at ball movement, for example, passing 360 degrees in a variety of different ways, then that can only be beneficial when in a match situation when there is a decision to make. That split-second decision and the autonomy of it can be sort of tapped into.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you said, and this was explained to me some time ago, a guy called Danny Newcomb, I think. So he's a rock star, anybody who's interested in, especially on game design, but also then getting into the detail a little bit around the types of games and stuff. So a Wii game to me just allows you to represent less. Mm-hmm. You're basically rubbing more out and you're having real focus and get real time on task, and that ultimately will lead into them becoming automatic. This ability just to deliver certain types of actions without them even knowing it. They can, oh wow, I just now know how to pass type stuff, or I know how to intercept. So yeah, that's to me what Wii games represent. Probably one thing I would like to just jump in now around the Wii games would be, often people start with them, and that's awesome. I would do that often. So it's a good way to get lots of touches, get people engaged. You can represent less of the game, maybe something, but also maybe something to consider is at times, I know we're going to talk about big games, is possibly start with a big game and let the big game inform you and then go into a Wii game. Mm-hmm. So I definitely to flip-flop with that. Often, pretty much most, if not all the time, I'm noticing Wii games are used at the start, and then we kind of build into something else. All I'm saying is consider possibly starting with a slightly bigger game and then going into Wii game. And just from my point of view, I would suggest anything that's 9-a-side is a Wii game, and anything over that, 10 and a plus, would be a big game. That's kind of how I would differentiate it. It's not an exact science. Some people might sort of argue a bit with that, might go on sort of 8s or 7s, but that's sort of how I would use it. But go on, you're about to talk about 7s, and I know you're super excited. What does 7s as a Wii game? So it's a version of the big game. Like, what's the benefits? We'll just sort of switch off for 10 minutes. Off you go.
No, I think skills under pressure, lots of pressure.
What's the pressure? So when you talk about that, what would that be? What does that mean to you, pressure?
So it could be like the distance you're having to pass, under fatigue. Generally, it could be line speed, or you're trying to generate, a bit of engagement. So you're trying to be in control of how you engage the defence. The numbers on the field, if there's 3 at a breakdown, then there's sort of 4 outfield players. So you can be creative, and you need to think about where the space is. So we're scanning, identifying space. It's usually pretty obvious in 7s, although when you're down on the pitch and you're having charging about for 3 or 4 minutes prior, then it can be maybe a wee bit more difficult to see. So the aspect of set piece, of being starting from an area and then trying to exploit space. The transition elements as well, so we have to realign really quickly and make sort of split-second decisions. We have to be really conscious of trying to limit maybe contests of possession. So if we can maybe offload the ball and then shift it to another space, then that stresses the defence. The other things I think it challenges hugely are like support. So you need to be bang on your decision making on when you carry, when you engage the defence, how accurate you are on the ground, or can you look to offload the ball before that? And then first arriving player needs to be really spot on, because those races are won and lost in a split second. So then also like other components would be sort of passing from the deck. So a lot of players have to be comfortable passing at 9, or maybe picking and running a little bit to try and fix defenders, which again then looking at wider out, then are we putting pace on the ball? Are we allowing the defence onto us? Are we trying to strike the line? Are we trying to tie in defenders? So yeah, for me, there's tons of things that can transfer into 15s or be an outlet for itself as a separate entity.
A couple of things I probably want to pick up on there would be, what's your view around, because I hear this a lot around the sevens, is that obviously anything not going as well as what you would want it is magnified in sevens. And also because the lead can change so much that there's often bigger moments. 15s doesn't necessarily always give you that, especially towards the end of the game. Because what I hear in sevens is actually 2 scores down with 2-3 minutes left is actually it's a real good opportunity to go and win the game. So the first one is those moments in the game where if it doesn't go well, like how do you practice that, I guess, around the sevens? Go on.
So I think statistically, international sevens, a couple of years ago when I was playing, you get 12 possessions a game. So that's on average, like sometimes a little bit more. If you can if you can win a higher percentage of your kickoffs back, you can maybe increase that to 13, 14, which as a percentage is big. So you can have the ball more.
How long would a possession last?
Could be anything from 5 seconds to up to 2 minutes potentially, and that's a high amount of activity. But then from what Fletch is sort of alluding to would be like the external pressures of the scoreboard and that next job focus that we need to get the ball back. So there's a necessity of having the ball. You can't score without the ball. So that might have been based on momentum. So we've just scored, and then the rules in sevens would be the kicking team kicks off. So there'd be a big focus on like regaining the ball and strategies and implementation, scanning, identification of where we're kicking the ball and then how to retrieve it, and then obviously like how we actually transition into an attack from that and philosophies around that. So yeah, it's more to it than meets the eye. I think having observed like where like the national game's going to be about now and how that would link into like school rugby, I think there's way more focus on like a little bit more contact and how to tie in defenders and how we go forward rather than maybe just passing the ball from side to side, which I think is a really good thing, because it's all about a balance of like keeping the ball alive, but then also going forward, because the try line is forward.
And I think there's loads actually from what you said is that when we looked at the creation of the Wii Games that we've drawn a lot from seven. So things you mentioned there isn't really a position specific focus in Wii Games. It's actually about creating the rugby player. So if you notice when you go through the blueprint, we don't really talk about forwards do this or backs do that. It's just here's a problem, exaggerated whether it's keep the ball alive, support, kick, find space, everyone have a go at it. So I think it's really important coaches don't worry about the number on the back of the player when they do Wii Games.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I see in Wii Games...
Taking this back to sevens.
No, I'm going away
we
from
went
sevens
off
now.
2 seconds on blueprint.
Trying to get back onto the actual topic, because we're going to have a sevens blether at some point, but
this is it, by the way.
Believe it or not, it's not.
This is your one shot.
We'll need an hour for that one. But yeah, the biggest thing is like considering your like constraints around the breakdown, because if you have even teams and then you potentially don't do anything to that person making the tackle, and maybe or a touch or a shoulder, and maybe not influence another player around the breakdown. If you're asking the attack to put one in, then the defence have more numbers on their feet. So other ways that you can adjust that would be maybe make players stand in the backfield to reduce numbers, because although we're given even teams, we think it's even, but as soon as we have a contest, then it's not even, and it becomes very difficult for the attack. So,
which is good in sometimes, obviously. We talk about giving defence opportunities to get the ball back, but you say it's a balance in it to make sure there's equal opportunities for success. And sometimes in a game of rugby, you will be numbers down in attack. But it's, I know what you mean. It's like when we can put a load of things up after the blether on ways to kind of things to do at the breakdown to create different challenges, I think we'll put as a Wii action to stick up. I've committed on film now, so we definitely have to do it.
Yep.
I love the Wii. What's your favourite Wii game and why?
For me, it's definitely Barbarians. So that's the first touch, you continue, you can't score. But I love the version where second touch is an automatic turnover. To really, and I like the principle of exaggerating that support. So getting creative once you, I think an opportunity once you've had a line break. I can't remember, heard one offload will break the line. If you can get a second offload straight away, you are likely then to score because you then shifted the point of contact again. But it's also getting, once a player's through, his head's up, looking around whether there's opportunity to kick. I think all these games make sure there's a run pass kick element to it, even though probably only Skyball and Cali have explicitly have kicking involved. I think all of these are decisions, but yeah, definitely Barbarians with that real pressure of getting the ball away a second time.
And what about defender? Like, what do you think that game affords the defender?
So when we play Barbarians, we really focus on if you can get a double touch simultaneously, that is, you get the ball back as well. So we talk about connection, also the work rate and tenacity to get back in. Like, all you have to do is touch that line break ball player and you get the ball back as well. So I think it's a really good game for looking at connection, but also if there is something, it's that work rate backwards. And I think if you look at all the kind of big moments and YouTube moments in games of defence, it's like that screaming back and making a try-saving tackle. I think that was one from James Fleming in Sevens a few years ago, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was, but we're moving off sevens.
I love how you keep on just chucking the hook.
We love fish.
Just going fish around sevens.
So definitely, yeah. I think the connection opportunity and the tenacity opportunities in Barbarians, I think, are really good.
Yeah, James, I was actually watching that exact variation of Barbarians at PDH on Monday, and a lot of the players were finding it really, really tough.
Yeah, it's very spicy
because there's a lot of pressure on that ball player, depending on how many numbers are on the field. So one sort of solution to that would be that we maybe think about having, the attack is allowed 5 or 6 double touches.
Yeah, which is the core. I think that's the core variation of the game, isn't it?
Yeah, so and again, I think my point would be, like, for every game that we maybe start with, we have to plan maybe 3 or 4 progressions or potentially regressions, either to keep it engaging for the players, to ensure the scoring system is achieving what we want to, and then ultimately, like, we're achieving outcomes. So we'd be playing a game for a reason, so it's linked into wider aspects. Yeah,
that's a real good point. One of the coach developers at that time when I started coaching, I was really fortunate. There's the questions that person used to ask me all the time. Where are you going to take this to? And, like, if it's too challenging, where are you going to regress through? So I think it's a really good skill to have as a coach. Like, I know straight away where I can go 1 or 2 levels above this, or it's different, it's more challenging. And then actually I can also go maybe 1 level below. Because we all have this point of view of this is where we'll start. And then definitely then we need to start to think and move it. No, that's definitely what I was thinking about there.
I think it's having, like, that connection with the players and that shared understanding that you can maybe ask them to dictate on where the game's going and what do they want to go after, to sort of coin an expression that Fletch would use quite a lot, where they're in control of the game and they can choose. So I think that's really powerful as well, something maybe not really mentioned so far.
Yeah, and it is, and also on that choice can be anything. Where do you want to take this?
Which game?
Yeah, which game? And also it can be, do you want this or this? Like, you can, and from a coaching point of view, in terms of your coaching skill, you'd be more than happy with either or. So definitely choice is important. However, choice can look like, do you want to do this or this? Do you want to play this way or that way? Both would work. Give them different pictures, but like, where do you want this to go? As open as that. But yeah, choice, we would have spoken about this a lot. Choice is really important. Keep on checking in with the players. Like, it's their session. If nothing else, it gets them to think. It gets them to think about what they're thinking about, or possibly what you're thinking about. But all of that's an important skill, I think. Any other Wii games for you before we move on? I've got one that I would want to share, but go on.
I'd really like a variety of hoik ball where we would bank points. Bank ball, I'm a huge fan. I think, just to quickly summarise it, if you're trying to accumulate 25 points or however many you decide, you accumulate them by making passes, so there's a transfer element, there's a ball movement aspect. If the attacking player is going to get touched in possession, you lose any points you haven't banked, you bank it by placing on the ball on the ground and saying bank. It then leads to transition, and every pass has a decision-making aspect to it. Run, pass, or bank, or you could add in kicking. but it can get pretty hectic if you do that. So I think it leads to lots of really good questions that you can ask the players, like, why did you choose to bank there? Could you have made an extra pass, which might link into tactical stuff to move the defence about? You could then, my progressions for that would be like 2 or 3 pass minimum before you can bank. So we're really looking to, force the issue a little bit of making passes. There's lots of off the ball work that we'd add into it, and I think you can make it really competitive as well. So I enjoy that one. I'm enjoy playing about with that one at the moment.
I've seen it used really well as a primer. So just get out players focused on a bit of kind of like, how can we beat the other team? Loads of touches of the ball, as you mentioned. Do you play in bigger spaces? Like I've seen it used in a Wii square game, like as a square game warm up, kind of activate kind of sense.
I think maybe have 5 aside would be good.
Yeah,
but you could play it a bit bigger as well, or smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Maybe.
What's yours?
Mine would be Rondo. Maybe a slight sort of build on that. I like the banking games when they've actually got to land on a certain score, and that's actually in itself quite a challenge to actually finish on a score based upon the scoring system. Definitely be mindful of your scoring system. I'd urge people, almost plead with them, score both sides of the ball always. Mm-hmm. In my view, score the defence more, because they often need that added motivation around defending rather than attacking young players. Not that often are players more motivated about defending. Some are. Tends to go with certain positions and a certain mindset, but definitely be mindful of your scoring systems and score defence. That's ultimately what's coaching our attack, is our defence, and vice versa. So make sure that there's that contest that you would want in terms of ultimately what's the purpose of the Wii game, like what do you want to get out of this Wii game. Mine would be Rondo, big fan, I love it. It was invented, and this is a bold statement.
You can say Pep Guardiola, aren't you?
You
can say Pep Guardiola?
Yeah, it was invented by Pep. It was then adapted by a number of rugby coaches. Yeah. So Banjo from England Sevens definitely adapted it and did some awesome stuff with it. Rondo is the reason I'm smiling now is because there's somebody crawling on the floor.
It's just really off.
Somebody's crawling on the floor. So no, Rondo, which is fundamentally an overload game.
Yeah.
It's real. You can have lots and lots of different constraints. 2 passes before you score. Certain people can score. And the thing I love about Rondo, and it's probably about all these Wii games, is that actually we start to get into the clan battle type mentalities that people have different stuff they're going after and the other people don't know. So I think also what we need to do in Wii games even better is to have that mindset around not everybody knows everything. And there's an element of we're trying to work out what your team's trying to do. And I think you can do that really well in Rondo. Like both sides of the ball, this is what we're trying to do. So you have that, which is basically what happens in the game is, say I'm an attacker, we're trying to achieve something, but I'm also trying to work out what they're trying to do. And that's a big part of the game. But Rondo, I love it. Lots and lots of action. I was with Claire Cruikshank last night with the Futures Women. She was running the girls having a great time. Loads and loads of touches, loads of decisions, both sides of the ball. That automatic was definitely happening. Like people were just doing stuff. If you'd asked them why, probably wouldn't be able to answer. So Rondo would be mine. Do you want to wrap up Wii games? Maybe like a summary.
A summary of Wii games.
You have to mention sevens.
So optimum number somewhere between 6 and 8. I think we discovered that.
Nice.
I like the idea that you mentioned that we tend to not necessarily be linear with Wii games. It's not a start learning into a big game. I actually like the idea of Wii games as a skill breakout and a meaningful skill breakout, because ultimately a skill is what am I doing based upon information of the defense and or attack. And a Wii game is absolutely the perfect scenario for that. Sometimes we talk about maybe we need to break into a drill that's quite controlled. So actually how we use Wii games, I think let's encourage coaches to have a go at using it as a skill breakout. Scoring systems, I think, play around with that, and we'll put some suggestions up of ways to defend, because it is a hard thing, and it's a thing as coaches that we always think about how we score the attack, and it's something that we've just traditionally done. So thinking of ways to to reward the defence. But yeah, summary, great for skill development, loads of touch of the ball for really kind of exaggerating a problem. It's for all positions, creating all-round rugby players like Mr. Riddell sat over there.
The Riddler, aka the Riddler, hashtag, be skillful as the Riddler.
Gents, another great chat. So loads of stuff for Wii games. We'll put some stuff out onto social media. We'll find a video of some Rondo so you can see what it looks like in action. But yeah, so if there's any kind of like, we were just chatting previously in the wee break that if there's any ideas that you want us to talk about or any content, then just give us a tweet and we can get some stuff done. Anything to add, guys, before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, I would be curious how helpful are these? Like, how would you want this to shaped? Do you want more of the Riddler, less of James, the same amount of me as an example, or the opposite? Would love to hear from you. These conversations are about us engaging around coaching and from a Scottish Rugby point of view, our blueprint, which we're really proud of.
Definitely. Okay, cheers, and we'll catch you next time.